George Patton does not see war as chaos. He sees it as destiny finally keeping an appointment. Long before his boots touch African soil, long before bullets fly or commands are shouted across radios, Patton is already here, in his mind, in his bones, in his blood. He believes he has fought wars like this before. Not metaphorically. Literally. Ancient wars. Forgotten wars. Wars where men fought face to face, steel against flesh, will against fear. To Patton, this is not a beginning. It is a return. He has waited his entire life for a real war. Not training exercises. Not theories. Not staff meetings and war games. A real war, where men die, where decisions cannot be revised, where reputations are burned into history by fire and blood. America has finally entered the Second World War. But George Patton believes the war has entered him. He is restless, impatient, furious at delay. While other generals speak carefully, cautiously, worried about politics, alliances, public opinion, Patton burns with certainty. He does not question whether war should be fought. He only questions whether it is being fought hard enough. To those around him, he is brilliant. To others, unbearable. To many, dangerous. He believes fear is a weapon. Discipline is mercy. And hesitation is the deadliest sin on the battlefield. Patton does not ask whether men are ready for war. He believes war is what makes men ready. As American troops prepare for their first major confrontation with the Axis powers, the U.S. Army is untested. Nervous. Still learning how to fight a modern, mechanized war. Mistakes are expected. Losses are feared. But Patton does not fear loss. He fears something far worse. Irrelevance. He has studied war his entire life. Ancient campaigns, cavalry charges, forgotten generals whose names are no longer spoken. He is obsessed with one question. What separates commanders who are remembered from those who are erased? Patton believes the answer is simple. Victory without apology. Yet history is never that clean. Because this war, his first real war, will give him exactly what he wants. Command. Battle. Victory. And it will also give him something he never expects. A stain that will follow him forever. Before the medals. Before the speeches. Before the controversy. There is only a man standing at the edge of war, convinced that destiny has chosen him, and unaware of the cost it is about to demand. This is the story of George Patton's first real war. And the victory that nearly destroyed him. North Africa does not welcome armies. It tolerates them briefly before swallowing their mistakes. By 1942, the desert has already learned the language of war. Tracks cut into sand by tanks vanish overnight. Heat bends metal, drains men, and turns simple decisions into fatal ones. There are no natural lines here, no rivers to anchor defenses, no forests to hide mistakes. Everything is exposed. Every movement is seen. Every error is punished. This is not Europe's war. There are no hedgerows. No cities to cling to. No familiar terrain for American soldiers raised on maps drawn in classrooms. Only space, distance, and silence that amplifies fear. Across this vast, hostile landscape, the Axis powers have been fighting for years. German and Italian forces know the desert's moods. They understand its cruelty. They have learned how quickly confidence turns into catastrophe under an open sky with nowhere to retreat. The Americans have not. When U.S. forces land in North Africa, they arrive with enthusiasm, but little experience. Their equipment is new. Their doctrine is theoretical. Their officers are trained for a war that exists mostly on paper. They are about to learn that paper burns easily. This campaign is not meant to be glorious. It is meant to be practical. A proving ground. A place where mistakes can be made before facing the full weight of German power in Europe. But war does not care about intentions. The desert equalizes everything. Rank means less when radios fail. Plans mean nothing when fuel runs out. Confidence collapses under artillery fire. For the American Army, North Africa is supposed to be a beginning. For George Patton, it is something else entirely. He sees the desert not as a problem, but as an opportunity. Here there is no history to hide behind. No traditions to lean on. Only results matter. Only movement, speed, aggression. The desert rewards those who act, and destroys those who hesitate. This is a place where Patton's philosophy makes sense. Where orders must be absolute. Where discipline must be ruthless. Where fear must be controlled, or used. But North Africa is also a mirror. It exposes weakness instantly. In the months ahead, American units will advance confidently, only to break apart under pressure. Commands will conflict. Communications will fail. Soldiers will freeze, unsure whether to advance or retreat. The desert will not forgive confusion. And when defeat comes, and it will come publicly, brutally, and without excuses. This world is about to strip illusions from everyone who enters it, including George Patton. Because North Africa is not just a battlefield. It is a test of leadership, a test of belief, a test of whether a man who has imagined war his entire life can survive the reality of it. The sand is waiting, and soon it will demand proof. Before the war tests him, George Patton has already tested himself, again and again, in ways no one else can see. He does not doubt his intelligence. He does not doubt his courage. What he doubts, quietly, dangerously, is whether history will remember him. Patton is not driven by patriotism alone. That would be too simple. He is driven by comparison, by an invisible jury made up of the great commanders of the past. Men he studies obsessively. Men he measures himself against. Men long dead, yet constantly present in his mind. He reads ancient battles not as history but as autobiography. To Patton, war is not random. It follows rules, patterns, eternal laws of aggression and will. He believes great commanders are not created by chance, but forged by temperament. And he is convinced, absolutely convinced, that his temperament is meant for this. Yet beneath the certainty lies anxiety. Because for all his preparation, Patton has never truly been tested in modern war. He has trained cavalry units, designed armored tactics, lectured younger officers with theatrical intensity. He has polished boots until they shine like mirrors and demanded the same obsessive standard from those under him. But training does not answer the question that haunts him. What happens when theory meets fear? Patton understands fear intimately. Not as weakness, but as fuel. He believes fear should be mastered, disciplined, and redirected outward. Soldiers should fear failure more than death. Fear disobedience more than bullets. This belief shapes everything about him. His voice, sharp, commanding, theatrical. His appearance, immaculate, deliberate, intimidating. His rituals, symbols designed to project inevitability. Patton believes leadership is performance. Not deception, but projection. If a commander looks unshakable, men will follow. If he hesitates, they will break. Yet Patton himself is not unshakable. Privately he struggles. His emotions swing violently, confidence surging into rage, pride collapsing into doubt. He writes obsessively, replaying imagined battles, rehearsing speeches no one has asked him to give yet that he knows the risk. Men like him do not fade quietly into history. They either dominate it, or are crushed by it. And North Africa is about to force that decision. For the first time, Patton will no longer be able to hide behind preparation. No more rehearsals. No more imagined victories. Only the raw arithmetic of war. Terrain, logistics, morale, death. If he succeeds, he will prove that his obsession was prophecy. If he fails, he will confirm the unspoken fear that stalks him. That he is not a great commander waiting for his moment, but a dangerous man who misunderstood himself. The war will decide. And it will not be gentle. When American forces finally move into North Africa, they do not march into legend. They step into confusion. The landings are ambitious, hurried, and imperfect. Ships crowd unfamiliar shores. Equipment arrives late or not at all. Orders change faster than they can be understood. Radios crackle with instructions that contradict one another. Officers argue. Men wait. This is not the clean beginning many imagined. For the soldiers, the war arrives without ceremony. There is no dramatic charge, no defining moment where courage rises naturally to meet danger. Instead, there is uncertainty. There is heat. There is dust in mouths and eyes and weapons. There is the sudden understanding that no amount of training fully prepares a man for the sound of shells landing nearby. The American army is modern on paper, but fragile in execution. Units advance without coordination. Tank crews outrun their infantry support. Artillery fires without clear targets. Supply lines stretch thin across hostile terrain, and when they break, nothing moves forward. The desert exposes every weakness. German forces, hardened by years of fighting, exploit hesitation instantly. They maneuver with confidence, using terrain and timing with precision. Where Americans pause to reconsider, the enemy advances. Where Americans debate, the enemy strikes. Men who expected a measured introduction to combat instead face a violent education. Some freeze. Some retreat without orders. Some fight bravely, only to be overwhelmed by forces they never saw coming. Rumors spread faster than facts. Entire units hear of defeats before they understand where the battle even is. Confidence drains quietly at first, then all at once. This is not cowardice. It is inexperience meeting reality. The American Army is learning in real time that war does not reward enthusiasm. It rewards clarity, speed, and command. Without those, bravery becomes irrelevant. As reports reach headquarters, the picture grows darker. Positions lost. Equipment abandoned. Casualties rising. The gap between expectation and reality widens into something dangerous. This is the moment every army fears. The moment when belief collapses. And somewhere behind the lines, watching this unfold, George Patton takes it all in. He sees exactly what he expected to see. Not failure of courage, but failure of discipline. Failure of leadership. Failure to impose will on chaos. To Patton, this is not proof that the Americans cannot fight. It is proof that they are not being commanded hard enough. The war has finally begun. And it is already demanding a price. The collapse does not arrive all at once. It creeps in through misjudgments, delays, and quiet assumptions that everything will somehow hold together. Then it does not. At Kasserine Pass, the American Army meets its reckoning. The terrain funnels men and machines into narrow spaces where hesitation is fatal. Hills rise sharply on either side, turning the battlefield into a corridor of pressure and noise. Orders come late. Responses come slower. Units are positioned without a clear understanding of what lies ahead, or who is supposed to support them. German forces strike with speed and coordination. Armor moves decisively. Artillery lands where it hurts most. American positions buckle under pressure they were never prepared to absorb. Command breaks down. Some officers wait for permission that never comes. Others issue orders that cannot be carried out. Communications fail, and with them goes cohesion. Soldiers fight bravely in isolated pockets, but bravery cannot compensate for confusion. The retreat begins unevenly, then accelerates. Equipment is abandoned. Lines dissolve. Men fall back not because they want to, but because there is nowhere else to go. What was meant to be a defensive stand becomes a withdrawal that no one fully controls. It is the first major defeat the American Army suffers in this war. And it is public. Reports spread quickly through Allied leadership. Observers take notes. Comparisons are made. The conclusion is unavoidable and deeply uncomfortable. The American Army is not ready. Not yet. Morale drops sharply. Confidence, so carefully cultivated during training, evaporates under the weight of reality. Soldiers begin to question their leaders. Leaders begin to question themselves. This is the most dangerous phase of any war. Not when bullets are flying, but when belief disappears. For George Patton, Kasserine Pass confirms everything he feared and everything he believed. The army has men willing to fight. What it lacks is command presence strong enough to dominate fear. The defeat creates a vacuum. And vacuums demand to be filled. What happens next will decide whether this failure becomes a lesson or a pattern. Because in war, collapse can either end a campaign or justify the rise of a different kind of leader. George Patton does not arrive quietly. He arrives with intention. The moment he takes command, the atmosphere changes. Not gradually, instantly. Orders are no longer suggestions. Standards are no longer negotiable. Every detail, from how a helmet is worn to how a vehicle is parked, becomes a measure of discipline. Patton understands something many commanders underestimate. Disorder announces weakness long before defeat does. He moves fast. Faster than his staff expects. Faster than many units can comfortably absorb. He replaces officers without hesitation. He rewrites procedures. He establishes routines that leave no room for ambiguity. Uniforms must be correct. Weapons must be clean. Positions must be defended or abandoned only by command. These rules are not cosmetic. They are psychological. Patton believes chaos begins with small permissions. One ignored rule leads to another. One moment of softness becomes an opening for fear. And fear, once it spreads, is almost impossible to contain. He makes it clear that retreat without orders will not be tolerated. That confusion is not an excuse. That failure to act is worse than acting imperfectly. Some resent him immediately. Others feel something unfamiliar but desperately needed. Certainty. Patton speaks to his troops with blunt force. There is no comforting language. No attempt to soften reality. He tells them they have been beaten because they were outfought, not because they were inferior. He tells them that the enemy is not invincible, only disciplined. He tells them that this will change. And then he proves that he intends to make it change. He pushes units forward aggressively, not to seek glory but to restore confidence. He drills movements repeatedly. He enforces coordination between armor, infantry, and artillery with relentless pressure. Mistakes are corrected immediately and publicly. Fear is no longer abstract. It has a direction. Under Patton, soldiers begin to fear consequences more than uncertainty. They know what is expected. They know what will happen if they fail to meet it. In the brutal logic of war, this clarity becomes stabilizing. The army begins to harden. But this transformation comes at a cost. Patton's methods leave no space for fragility. Exhaustion is ignored. Emotional strain is dismissed. The idea that fear might need compassion rather than correction has no place in his system. To Patton, war is not a place for understanding. It is a place for obedience. The army is changing. Faster than anyone anticipated. But beneath the renewed confidence lies a question no one dares to ask out loud yet. If victory is built on fear, what happens when fear breaks the wrong way? That answer is coming. At first, the results speak louder than the methods. Under George Patton, the army moves with purpose again. Orders are followed. Lines hold. Units advance instead of hesitating. Confidence, once shattered, begins to rebuild itself through action rather than reassurance. From a distance it looks like success. But up close something else is forming. Patton's system leaves no room for weakness, and war produces weakness constantly. Men crack under pressure. Fatigue dulls judgment. Fear surfaces in unexpected ways. What once might have been treated as strain is now treated as failure. Patton does not see this as cruelty. He sees it as necessity. To him, the battlefield is not a place for emotional negotiation. Sympathy, he believes, is a luxury paid for in blood. Every man who hesitates puts others at risk. Every breakdown threatens the whole formation. This belief sharpens his command style into something unforgiving. Officers feel it first. They are watched closely, corrected publicly, replaced without ceremony. The message is unmistakable. Authority flows downward and excuses flow nowhere. For enlisted men, the pressure is constant. There is no safe margin for error. There is no allowance for panic. Fear must be mastered immediately, or crushed. Some soldiers thrive under this structure. They welcome the clarity. They feel safer knowing exactly where they stand and what is expected of them. For them, Patton's severity feels like strength. Others begin to fracture quietly. The desert is already brutal. Sleep is scarce. Combat is relentless. Men carry exhaustion in their bodies and dread in their thoughts. In moments away from the front, there is little relief. Patton's presence is everywhere, spoken about, anticipated, feared. He has become an idea as much as a commander. An idea that says failure is not tolerated. An idea that says fear is unacceptable. An idea that says victory excuses everything. This is where the fault line forms. Because war demands discipline, but it also creates trauma. And when trauma is mistaken for weakness, punishment replaces care. What was meant to strengthen an army begins to harden it in dangerous ways. Patton does not see this tension. Or if he does, he dismisses it. In his mind, the army is finally becoming what it must be to survive. The results justify the cost. The desert is being mastered. The enemy is being pushed back. But leadership is not only measured by movement on a map. It is measured by what it does to the people who follow. And soon this fault line will break open, not in battle but in a hospital tent far from the guns. The hospital tent is supposed to be quiet. It is meant to be a place where the war loosens its grip, where the wounded can breathe without listening for artillery, where pain is acknowledged rather than judged. Inside, the air is heavy with antiseptic and exhaustion. Men lie on cots, some bleeding, some shaking, some staring into nothing at all. This is where the war goes when it has nowhere else to go. George Patton enters with the authority he carries everywhere. His presence changes the temperature of the room. Conversations stop. Bodies stiffen. Even here, far from the front, discipline follows him. He moves down the line of wounded soldiers, asking questions. Names. Units. Injuries. His tone is sharp, impatient. He expects answers that make sense within his understanding of war. Then he reaches a soldier who does not fit the pattern. The man is not bleeding. There are no visible wounds. He is shaking, overwhelmed, unable to articulate what is wrong beyond fear. His voice falters. His eyes avoid contact. The war has reached him in a way that leaves no marks. Patton hears the explanation and rejects it instantly. To him, this is not injury. It is failure. In Patton's world, fear without physical cause is dangerous. It spreads. It weakens others. It must be stopped immediately. He does not see a man broken by pressure. He sees a threat to discipline. His anger rises fast and without restraint. He calls the soldier a coward. His words are sharp enough to cut through the tent. Then, in a moment that will echo far beyond this desert, Patton strikes him. The sound is loud. final. Impossible to misunderstand. The tent freezes. Nurses stare. Doctors stop moving. Other wounded men turn their heads, unsure whether to look or look away. This is no longer discipline. This is something else. Patton orders the soldier out. He demands that he be sent back to the front. He leaves the tent as abruptly as he entered, convinced that he has done what leadership requires. But something has shifted. The war has crossed an invisible boundary. What happens next unfolds quietly at first. Witnesses talk. Reports move up the chain of command. The incident is no longer contained by canvas walls and desert silence. It reaches officers who understand the consequences. It reaches leaders who know how fragile public trust can be. The question is no longer about tactics or momentum. It is about morality. Patton has delivered results. The army is recovering. The enemy is being pushed back. But now his methods are under scrutiny in a way they never were before. Was this discipline, or abuse? Strength, or cruelty? Leadership, or failure of control? The war does not pause to answer. But history does. And it is watching closely now. The battlefield does not stop for outrage. Tanks still move. Orders are still given. Men still die. Yet something intangible now travels alongside the war, moving faster than any column of armor. The story of what happened inside that hospital tent spreads through whispers, reports, and uneasy conversations. It moves upward through command channels and outward into moral territory where victory alone is no longer enough. For the first time, George Patton is not being judged by the enemy. He is being judged by his own side. Those who defend him speak of necessity. They point to the chaos that preceded his arrival. They argue that war demands harshness, that softness costs lives, that discipline saves armies even when it wounds individuals. They ask a simple question. If Patton's methods restore order and prevent future collapse, are they not justified? Others see something darker. They see a man unable, or unwilling, to recognize the limits of human endurance. They see fear mistaken for cowardice, trauma mistaken for weakness, authority mistaken for righteousness. They ask a different question. If victory requires stripping men of their humanity, what exactly has been won? There is no easy answer. War has always lived in this contradiction. It demands obedience while destroying stability. It requires courage while generating terror. It celebrates strength while producing wounds that cannot be seen. Patton exists perfectly inside this paradox. He is not a monster. He is not a saint. He is a commander shaped by war's oldest logic. But now that logic is colliding with a modern reality that refuses to stay silent. Behind the scenes, decisions are being made. Words like discipline, image, and accountability enter the conversation. Apologies are discussed. Consequences are considered. The machinery of command turns slowly, carefully, aware that every move sends a message far beyond this campaign. And the audience, then and now, is forced into the same uncomfortable position. Would you rather be led by a man who terrifies you into obedience, or one who risks collapse by allowing fear to breathe? Is effectiveness enough? Or does leadership demand something more? The war does not answer these questions. It only exposes them. The war does not wait for resolution. While debates unfold behind desks and inside command tents, the fighting in Tunisia continues with relentless indifference. The enemy does not pause to consider reputations or controversies. He advances, withdraws, regroups, and strikes according to opportunity alone. Under this pressure, the army responds differently now. Movements are tighter. Coordination improves. Units advance with a confidence that did not exist weeks earlier. Orders are executed quickly, without the hesitation that once turned seconds into disasters. The difference is visible on the ground. Armor and infantry move together. Artillery support arrives on time. Positions are taken methodically and held with purpose. When resistance stiffens, units adjust instead of freezing. The chaos that defined earlier engagements begins to fade. This is not brilliance. It is competence. And competence in war is transformative. Patton's influence is everywhere, even when he is not physically present. His expectations shape behavior. His intolerance for disorder forces clarity. The army no longer wonders how it is supposed to fight. It knows. Enemy forces feel the change immediately. American units no longer dissolve under pressure. They counterattack. They maneuver. They exploit openings instead of retreating from them. The desert, once a place of humiliation, becomes a proving ground. Victory does not come easily, but it comes steadily. With each engagement, confidence builds, not the fragile confidence of training exercises, but the hardened confidence of survival. Soldiers begin to trust not just their equipment or their orders, but themselves. This is the paradox of Patton's command. The same severity that wounds also strengthens. The same pressure that breaks some forges others into something more durable. The army that emerges in Tunisia is no longer the army that stumbled into North Africa months earlier. It is sharper, more disciplined, more dangerous. And the results are undeniable. Enemy positions fall. Momentum shifts. The campaign moves toward its conclusion with an inevitability that once seemed impossible. From a purely military perspective, the verdict is clear. The approach works. But war is never judged only by maps and casualty reports. Beneath the forward motion lies unresolved tension. The success does not erase what happened. It merely postpones the reckoning. Because victory achieved under controversy carries a different weight. And when the fighting ends, that weight will come down hard. The campaign ends not with celebration, but with exhaustion. By the time the fighting in North Africa draws to a close, the map tells a story of success. Enemy forces have been defeated. The Axis foothold has been broken. The American army stands transformed, no longer untested, no longer uncertain. From a strategic standpoint, it is a victory that matters. But victories leave traces. Behind the statistics and after-action reports, a quieter reckoning unfolds. Letters are written. Conversations take place behind closed doors. The incident in the hospital tent does not disappear into the noise of triumph. It lingers, uncomfortable and unresolved. For George Patton, the shift is immediate and unmistakable. He is no longer spoken of only as the commander who restored order and momentum. He is now also the commander whose judgment crossed a line. Praise and concern exist side by side, inseparable. Allied leadership understands the dilemma clearly. Patton delivers results. He imposes discipline where it is desperately needed. Yet his behavior threatens something just as important as battlefield success: legitimacy. An army does not fight in isolation. It fights under public scrutiny, political oversight, and moral expectation. Actions that might once have been tolerated in silence now carry consequences far beyond the front lines. Patton is ordered to apologize. The demand cuts deeply. To him, the apology feels like a betrayal of principle. He believes he acted to protect the army, to prevent collapse, to save lives. Being asked to express regret feels like being told that war should be something it can never be. Still, he complies. The apology is delivered. The words are spoken. The moment passes. But something has changed permanently. Patton remains in uniform. He remains a general. But the trust placed in him is no longer absolute. He is watched more closely. Decisions are filtered. Opportunities are delayed. The victory in North Africa does not launch him forward as he imagined. It pauses him. The army moves on to new challenges, carrying forward the lessons learned under his command. Many of those lessons will shape future victories. Few will openly acknowledge where they came from. Patton, meanwhile, is left to confront an unfamiliar reality. He has won. And he has been punished. Both are true. For the first time in his career, George Patton is forced to slow down. The war continues elsewhere, but his role is reduced. He remains in uniform, remains visible, yet feels curiously sidelined. The momentum that once carried him forward now presses against an invisible barrier. This is unfamiliar terrain. Patton has always believed that action resolves doubt. That movement answers criticism. That results silence questions. Now, despite success, questions remain. And they are no longer coming from others alone. They come from within. Patton replays the moment again and again, not to apologize but to understand. He tells himself that discipline saved the army. That fear, properly directed, prevented greater disaster. That the man in the hospital tent represented something dangerous in the middle of a fragile campaign. Yet the repetition does not bring peace. Because beneath the justification lies uncertainty. Patton prides himself on control, over troops, over operations, over himself. The incident exposes a moment where control slipped. Where anger replaced calculation. Where instinct overrode judgment. This realization troubles him more than any reprimand. A commander who cannot control himself risks becoming the very chaos he despises. At the same time, Patton remains convinced that softness would have failed. That compassion, misunderstood, would have led to collapse. The war, he believes, does not reward balance. It rewards dominance. Caught between these beliefs, Patton becomes a study in contradiction. He is reflective but not remorseful. Corrected but not convinced. Paused but not broken. The cost of command, he begins to understand, is not only what leaders demand of others. It is what leadership exposes in themselves. North Africa has given him proof that his methods can win. It has also revealed that those methods carry consequences beyond the battlefield. Consequences that cannot be measured in territory gained or enemy units destroyed. As the war moves toward Europe, Patton knows he will fight again. He knows history has not finished with him yet. But he also knows that the first real war he longed for has already taken something from him. Certainty. North Africa does not remember George Patton. The desert erases footprints quickly. Wind smooths over tank tracks. The battlefield forgets almost as soon as the fighting stops. But history does not forget as easily. When the campaign ends, Patton leaves behind an army that is no longer naive. It has learned how to fight, how to recover from failure, and how to impose its will under pressure. The lessons forged in the desert will shape future victories, even when his name is not spoken aloud. This is the contradiction of his legacy. Patton's influence endures, even when he himself is held at a distance. The war he dreamed of all his life finally gave him what he wanted. It tested him. It proved him capable of imposing order on chaos. It showed that his instincts, however harsh, could turn defeat into momentum. But it also revealed something he never fully anticipated. Victory does not absolve everything. The first real war that defined George Patton also marked him. It fixed him in the public imagination not just as a commander of force, but as a symbol of a question war never resolves. How much brutality is acceptable in the pursuit of order? How much humanity can be sacrificed before victory loses its meaning? Patton never finds a comfortable answer. He does not soften with time. He does not retreat into apology. He moves forward as he always has, convinced that history favors the bold even when it judges them harshly. North Africa forges him into the general he will become. It strips away illusion and leaves behind something sharper, more dangerous, and more effective. But it also ensures that his name will always carry controversy alongside accomplishment. He is forged by war. But he is not forgiven by it. And perhaps that is the truest mark of a commander who shaped history, not cleanly, not gently, but decisively. The desert closes behind him. The war continues. And the argument he left behind still echoes.